Welcome to the Choral Connection, a series of interviews with musicians with whom Maestro Harold Rosenbaum has collaborated over his 47-year international conducting career. We hope you are inspired by their artistry and the stories they have to tell. For more about the series, please visit www.haroldrosenbaum.com.
Welcome, everybody. Today, I am honored to have Joan Tower as my guest. And I'll tell you a little bit about her, and then I'll ask her some questions. Joan is a Grammy-winning contemporary American composer, concert pianist, and conductor, lauded by The New Yorker as one of the most successful women composers of all time. Her bold and energetic compositions have been performed in concert halls around the world. After gaining recognition for her first orchestral composition, Sequoia, in 1981, a tone poem which structurally depicts a giant tree from trunk to needles, she has gone on to compose a variety of instrumental works, including Fanfare for the Uncommon Woman, which is something of a response to Aaron Copland's Fanfare for the Common Man, the Island Prelude, 5 string quartets, and an assortment of other tone poems. Joan was a pianist and founding member of the Naumburg award-winning Da Capo Chamber Players, which commissioned and premiered many of her early works. She received a doctorate in composition from Columbia University in 1968, and in 1972 she joined the faculty of Bard College, a position she still holds today. She became the first woman recipient of the Grawemeyer Award for Music in 1990, and has since won many prestigious awards, which you can read about if you go online. She has been composer in residence at the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra and the Orchestra of St. Luke's, and she once conducted at the White House. I'll ask her about that later. She is a member of the American Academy of Arts and Letters and serves on the Artistic Advisory Panel of the BMI Foundation. You can read much more about her, as I said, online. Welcome, Joan.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. I met Joan about 8 or 9 years ago when I commissioned 25 of America's leading composers to write short choral works to celebrate the 25th anniversary of my professional choir, the New York Virtuoso Singers. And she wrote a wonderful piece called Descending. That's the right title, right?
Yes.
Descending. We'll talk about that a little later also. First, I wanted to, let me just go back and ask you which president invited you to the White House and what was the occasion?
It was an amazing occasion. It was when Clinton was president, and Hillary Clinton was the member of this group called the Women's Forum, which is an international group of women leaders and business people in the political and business world, some in the arts world. So my piece celebration was performed there with a military band made up of all women from the Air Force, and I conducted. And it was really quite an event, watching all these women come in from all over the world, and they do this kind of spin. Oh my God, there are all these women brass players there, and in uniform. It was incredible. Wow. So it was dedicated to Hillary, actually.
Have you actually studied conducting?
No, oh no, except one guy, Harold Farberman. Did you ever know him?
Oh, sure.
I did one thing with his seminar, just conducting once, because he asked me, and he said, Joan, here's the problem. You're like a Jewish mother. You lean forward and you beg. That was the only thing I was ever told by a teacher. So I learned how to conduct on my own, just on my own, by doing it.
And we know there are so many great composers who also conducted, like Benjamin Britten and, well, of course, Leonard Bernstein. You can say he was a conductor first, but
Stravinsky, Copland, yeah.
Copland enjoyed it late in life. He only started conducting late in life, right?
Right.
Regarding Aaron Copland, because I was going to ask you, now that you mentioned, and we mentioned him, besides his fanfare for the common man, inspiring your fanfare for the uncommon woman, how much of an influence, if any, did he have on you?
Oh, Copeland?
Yeah.
Copeland was a major influence. We did a concert of his music, and I got to meet him. He's a very. Did you know him?
Yeah, I met him once when I conducted what I feel is his greatest choral work, which is In the Beginning.
Uh huh.
It was 1980. I remember this because it was his 80th birthday, November 1st, 1980,
Uh huh.
when Symphony Space did a tribute, an all day long tribute to him. One of these wall to wall concerts.
Yes.
And I knew he was going to be there, so I memorized the piece. I usually conduct, with the score in front of me. And when I finished, I noticed him in the audience, and I went and introduced myself. Otherwise, I never studied or anything with him.
Right. Right. He was a very elegant man. A very. I liked his honesty. In his music. I think his music is so honest, straightforward, no covers anywhere, no pretenses of any kind. I just love, and it's also he has a voice, a very
Right.
significant. You play two chords, and you know it's Copeland. You know it's
Oh,
you know.
I know.
So the no, sorry, yes, Houston Symphony was commissioning composers to write for. Actually, Tobias Picker was the composer. This was his idea. And he said, I'm going to commission a short piece for every subscription concert so that we make sure we have a living composer on every concert. I thought it was a great idea. Of course, they had to be short.
Right.
So he decided they should be kind of fanfare-ish type things. And I was like, he asked me, and I said, "What's a fanfare?" I wasn't sure what a fanfare was, except that it was involved brass somehow.
Mhm.
uh, but all I could think of was Copeland's fanfare, and I thought, I want to do a tribute to him, but also I don't like that title, fanfare for the common man. It just rubbed me the wrong way, so I turned it around to uncommon woman, and I decided to dedicate it to uh, women. There are actually six of them. Who take risks and who are adventurous and who have a vision. And so they're dedicated to formidable women, all of them. The first one's dedicated to Marin Alsop,
Oh,
who's a
yes.
pioneer
Yeah.
woman conductor.
Yeah.
And she's actually recording this piece now. It may
Nice.
be in the White House inauguration for Kamala Harris. It may be.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So,
Wow. Good
yeah,
luck with that. Oh,
yeah.
my God.
So,
I actually conducted Marin and her two parents in the late 70s in a Bach,
oh, yes, they were
Bach
both,
cantata.
yeah, with the New York Phil, right?
Yeah, they played with the New York Phil, and she Marin donated, well, is loaning her parents' instruments to players in the Baltimore Symphony. But
Ah.
I just hired Marin. She was a violinist at the time, and I hired her and her two parents. I don't know how I found out about them. That was like 1976 to perform in a Bach cantata. They were half the ensemble, the three of them.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah. Well, good luck. Well, let's hope your piece gets played. So
Well,
each,
it'd be a great honor. Yeah.
yeah. So each one is dedicated to a woman. It's sort of like um, the enigma variations, where each movement is, yeah. Okay. By Elgar. That's interesting. Um, so who else influenced? I know that when I worked with you, you said Beethoven was your major influence
Beethoven was a major
in your.
influence. I played a lot of his. I was a pianist.
Yeah.
I still am,
Mhm.
but in those days, I played a lot of piano, and I played a lot of his sonatas and his trios, and some of his cello sonatas, violin sonatas. And I just he had a huge impact on me because of the his narrative. Um, it's the way he goes from place to place in what I call a balancing action. Like he'll tip the balance is over to another side, so you start to get this conflict, this kind of interplay of register, dynamics, rhythm, texture all together at once,
Hmm.
and that dynamic influenced me a lot as a composer. Um, he also took a lot of risks, and that's one of the keys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, something that Haydn didn't like when he saw compositions by Ludwig, right?
Haydn took a lot of risks too, right?
Yeah, I know. Um, when I asked you to write a piece for me, you said you were reluctant at first because you said you had never written a choral piece before. And it's so interesting because you turned out this incredible piece for me. But is that true? You never.
Well, the thing was, I had written a children's choir piece before that called "Can I," and I the only reason I accepted that was because it was for children, and I
Mm,
thought, oh, I can just go wild. I can use my imagination. I don't have to do this proper choral thing at all, you know. But so I did, and that's a very tough piece. But um, the, I'd been asked by a lot of singers to write for voice songs, and I just kept turning them down, turning them down.
wow.
The problem is for me is the mix of words and music, and how do you put those two meanings together in one place? That's always been the problem. So, but I, you know, I was being very stubborn because you can lean towards the music or you can lean towards the words like you do in folk music.
Hmm.
Folk music is basically about the words, you know,
Right,
more than the music,
right,
you know. And then there's a lot of choral music that leans towards the music and not so much about the words at all.
right. Especially when a composer like Handel or Bach recycle, and like isn't aren't some of the movements in Messiah taken from a secular like opera,
Oh,
and
really? I didn't know that.
things
Oh,
like
oh,
that,
oh,
things like that.
okay.
Well, Bach the borrower. Um,
Well, I said, you know, you're being pig-headed. This is really stupid. Here you have this wonderful chorus to ask you to write a piece for them. Go for it. And my
right,
sister had died uh, that year, and I decided to make this about
right,
her dying. So I wrote the piece, and then I dropped these very simple words on it that have to do with grief and sorrow and anger too, that she
right,
died, that she left us. So the word again, it's the music that's driving that thing, and it's very clear what it's about. There's no ambiguity. There's no subtlety or anything about the words. So
right.
and you guys did an amazing job with it. I was just like, my God, that actually kind of works,
It
you
worked.
know,
It
except for a
didn't,
few places that I changed,
yeah,
you know.
it didn't kind of work. It definitely worked. I mean, if it were an instrumental piece, it would work also. But yeah, the words do add a significant amount of emotion and impact and power to. I mean, you just listen to, and the opening of any Bach cantata movement, and the words and the music together integrated are so powerful and meaningful and spiritual. So yeah.
Well, it's a hard thing to do. It's very hard for me because the words can so easily take over, and
Mhm.
uh, but now I'm beginning to see that they don't have to take over.
No, no, it's the
No, that
integration. No, it's the composite piece.
exactly.
Yeah. And I remember you in one of my rehearsals, you were, you know, rethinking a few things, and that's fine. That's why I like to have composers there, obvious, at the rehearsals. Obvious, and you knew when to stop, when to. We only had I had like 10 other pieces on the program that I was conducting.
Right, right. I know
But there was.
that project. I have to tell you, I tell everybody about that project.
Well,
What
thank
a
you.
great way to celebrate an anniversary. Commission 25 shortish pieces
Yeah.
by major composers, What a great, and the composers will do it probably, in a second because they respect the project. No,
Yeah,
I congratulate you so
thank you.
much on that project, and then you recorded them all. So
Recorded
that's
them.
that's
Yeah.
amazing.
I was very lucky to have the resources to do that at the time. Um, I was working for a man who had money, and yeah, he helped me out. I'm not with him anymore, so I'm still again a struggling artist. But since then, the ASCAP Foundation and I, as you might know, got together and they commissioned 50 Morton ASCAP Foundation Morton Gould Young Composer Award recipients. So it was a 6-year project, and I mean, they were all recorded. They weren't. It's not a commercial CD, but they were all performed, and you probably know
Fantastic.
them. Some of them are your students. I don't know,
That's
but yeah,
fantastic. Yeah, what a great thing to do, really. Because
yeah.
those
Well,
pieces will go on. Some of them will go on, and some
yeah.
of those composers will go on. And then you can say, "See, I
Oh,
was
yeah,
there at the beginning." Yeah.
yeah. Well, one of them was only 13 or 14, a Tengu,
Oh my God.
and he wrote a brilliant piece in 8 or 12 parts. That was like, whoa. I mean, where are you coming from? But yeah, most of them are now 8 years later or 6 years later. They're playing with major orchestras and
Yeah.
almost none of them had ever written for chorus before. Only one.
Oh, see, that's another thing. Oh,
I,
fantastic.
yeah, I wanted to ask you. You spent many years in Bolivia as a young woman, and you say you were influenced by the rhythms you heard there. Can you elaborate on that, or demonstrate any, or
Oh
just talk?
yeah, my father was a mining engineer, geologist, and he got a job in Bolivia, running the mines in Bolivia. So we were taken from this very comfortable little environment in Larchmont, New York, which is sort of near you, I think,
Yeah,
somewhere.
I know
Yeah.
where.
And I had my little peanut butter sandwiches and my bicycle and my friends, and everything was super comfortable. And then I was thrown into this culture in up in the mountains, 12,000 feet up in the
Wow.
mountains. La
Whoa.
Paz, it's the highest, I think it's the highest capital in the world. And new language, new everything, new everything. And
Wow.
wow, it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it, it showed me a different perspective, a different cultural perspective, a different language. I learned Spanish, of course, and
Mhm.
I just grew up into a kind of a I had an international perspective, not international, but at least more international than just
Yeah.
growing up in Larchmont. Uh, and so we had these Inca Indians who took care of me actually, and she would take me to these festivals, which were every 3 days. They had a lot of saints there. Uh,
Oh yeah.
they also wanted a reason to party,
That's
and
funny.
she would kind of dump me at the band and go off and have a great time, and I would have a great time because I'd be sitting there with a maraca or a drum or something with the guys who were playing in the band.
Wow.
So that became a very exciting opening for me for rhythm. And then I
Mhm.
became a dancer. I love to dance, and so a lot of my music is rhythmic, and most of my music is rhythmically based. It's a
Mhm.
visceral kind of thing, which
Right.
I'm very involved with.
Well, it must be nice to have every time you are involved with them, it brings back your wonderful memories of childhood, 12,000 feet high. So,
Yes, yes, it does. Yeah,
well, you're prepared for Aspen. Have you been to Aspen, the music festival?
many times,
Yeah.
many times.
I
Yeah,
think,
and then
what,
Utah, we had a string quartet festival in Utah for 20 years, and that's 7,000 feet up. So yeah,
wow. Um, just a little bit more, I won't keep you. Can you tell us some important advice that you like to give young composers? I know you teach composition.
I my advice is to start your own group.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that in many ways. You can do it as a player with other players. You can do it as a producer, where you hire players and you become like the producer of the event. You can do it as a collective. I mean, there's just so many, and we have examples of all of these types of solutions that many composers have made
Hmm.
to create their own vision of what they want to do musically, and
Right.
that's the way to do it. Is to
Right.
just to start. It's not easy. You have to
Yeah.
fundraise. You have to get a venue. You have to do a lot of work. But I mean,
Oh, yeah.
you know how this goes, right?
Yeah. Well,
But what a
I
beautiful thing it is to do.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was sort of stuck in a way. Now that you mention it, when I was graduating from, with my master's, I
Mhm.
realized I wouldn't be. At that point, I had been assistant conductor of the Queen's College Choir, but I realized I would have no instrument, so I went out and started my own group. Yeah,
Yeah.
one has to do it.
That's what Marin did. She started her own string group. And oh, the early women conductors.
Joanne Folletta.
Did Joanne start her own group? I'm not sure about Joanne.
Well, yeah, she did. She started the Queen's Sinfonia. Uh,
Oh, she did. I didn't
yeah,
know that. Okay, one of my fanfares is dedicated to her.
one of your. Oh, really? Oh, good for you, and
Yeah,
good for
yeah,
her.
yeah.
Wonderful.
And the other woman, Eva Quayler,
Oh, Eve Quayler.
she
Eve Quayler.
started her own group, right? Which was an
Yeah,
opera group.
Opera Society or whatever
And
it was.
Caldwell, Sarah Caldwell. These are all people who had no way to do anything without starting their own group.
Wow.
Yeah.
You mentioned all women. Was it harder for women composers back then
Well,
to?
no, well, actually, I was thinking conductors, but composers started their own groups. Steve
Yeah,
Reich, Phil Glass,
yeah,
Bang and I
sure.
Can. There's
Diana,
a
Diana,
whole list of people, composers, who
right,
started their own groups. Yeah.
right. Wow. Well, is there anything else you want to say? Like, how do you relax when you're not composing?
I watch
Or
a
anything?
good foreign film.
Good for you. Why not? Especially now. Yeah.
Well, it's delightful to talk to you, Harold. I think
Thank you,
you do a
Joan.
fantastic job. You just stick with your guns and you
Well,
do what you feel is the right thing to do for choral music. And you got this older composer to write a choral piece. That's pretty
everybody should
good.
everybody should listen. Now it's been published, I'm assuming, so people should
It
go out.
has, it has, but I did make that one change. I think I sent it to you.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
all right.
yeah. Just
Tchaikovsky,
so you know, it's
Tchaikovsky
better.
wrote a lot. Tchaikovsky made a lot of changes after he wrote pieces, right?
I change them all the time. If I don't like what I hear, I change it.
Of course, why not?
It's
Well,
just a
be
little
well.
harder when it's recorded and published. It's a little harder.
Yeah, a little harder, but so what? You keep
Yeah,
doing what you have to do.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Harold. I'm glad we got the whole thing going.
Yeah, be well. Happy
Be
New
well.
Year.
Be well. Happy New Year.
Okay, bye
Bye bye.
bye.
Bye bye.